Hello and welcome to Yes, You Are Brave. This is a podcast where we are going to set off on a journey together to find and build our brave, where we explore all the ways that you have been brave and all the ways that you can be brave again. Because even though we may have forgotten or we may have fallen out of practice, we're all brave. And I'm on a mission to prove it and help you believe that yes, you are brave. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Yes, You Are Brave. This is our part 2 on forgiveness with Barbara Hunt, who is a forgiveness specialist, author, and just an amazing person. So in our last episode, we talked about what forgiveness is and kind of an introduction to it. This episode, we are going to continue our conversation and talk about why is it so hard and why don't we do it? So let's jump back into this conversation, shall we? So the next question that I have is why don't we forgive? Because you talked about that. We've talked about that before of like, there's reasons we don't forgive. There's reasons we don't want to like take these steps that we know maybe we need, or even if we don't know we need them. So let's talk, why don't we forgive? Why is that so hard?
Yeah, there's lots of reasons. One is we don't necessarily realize we need to do it, and that can really get in our way. Like we were saying at the beginning, well, that's not relevant to me. My husband is an idiot. I obviously resent that person for doing that, or you say, well, so we don't realize, oh, actually, maybe if I didn't treat him like an idiot or thought he was an idiot, then maybe we would have a better relationship. We're not adding two and two together. That's one really important obstacle, is that we don't realize that it's relevant to us, and because we think the other person should be doing it differently, we don't think it's anything to do with us. We don't think this is we think it's them. Well, if they were just different and do the thing that I want them to do, and then I'd be fine. But we're not going, oh, I'm actually resenting them, I'm holding ill will, I'm judging them, I'm being superior to them. We don't notice that bit, and that's one of the other really important obstacles, is we don't notice that there's actually something quite delicious about this. We're a bit addicted to our resentment, and that's a really key part. And that was one of the things I learned on the More to Life weekend. They get you to look at your payoffs for holding your resentment. And that's quite important psychological work. It's also shadow work, because you're having to admit, oh, well, I like this resentment. Actually, a friend of mine read my book and she said, I realized how much I enjoy my resentments. that was her conclusion from the book. But one of the most important, so this is an example of the things that we get out of resentment, is when we have no power, it feels like we've got something. So if you've hurt me and I've got this resentment, it feels like it hurts less, because you're wrong. You shouldn't have done that. So I harden my heart. So I carry my resentment like protection over my heart. And that seems like a powerful thing. Like I've got something, I've got the moral high ground. We also love being right. Who doesn't love being right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I have it as an excuse. So I might be playing a bit of a martyr, or I might be playing a bit of a victim. And I know I did that around my mum's illness, because I got a lot of brownie points, Girl Guide points, for taking time off to look after my mum. But my resentment gave me a bit of an excuse to, like, well, you can't expect me to, make these life choices or get on with that because, my mum was ill. So we use our resentment as an excuse for maybe not leaving a relationship we should leave, or maybe not making a difficult choice about our lives, or we let ourselves off the hook, or we use it as, well, the other person did that, so I'm justified in doing that. I can steal the stationery from the office because, my boss was unkind and unfair. We justify our behavior. So there's all these different things that we get out of holding the resentment. And one of the most important is that it feels like protection when we've been hurt. And this is what Gabor Mate would call, or Thomas Hubel, those kinds of teachers who talk about compassionate inquiry, they would call it a very intelligent coping mechanism. This is the best thing you can do when you're young and the people around you are not treating you in the way that inside yourself, in your kind of heart of hearts, you know you should be loved and respected and honored and being adored, and you're not. So sometimes this is your best effort to try and protect yourself. The truth is you've been hurt, but so this feels just like a bit better, like a sticking plaster or something a bit hard over the top. The other thing we don't realize, so we don't notice that we're getting something out of the resentment, the payoffs, but we also don't notice it's costing us something. We're not in touch with the downside. This, if I've got protection over my heart and I'm trying to have an intimate relationship, no one can get in. They just hit this because I'm so well protected. I can't make myself vulnerable because it feels too much. If I just am present to the pain that I experienced, it feels too vulnerable. And that's one of the other really key things. We don't want to feel that vulnerability. So we think this is better, but actually it stops us really feeling fully, like stops the heart healing. They feel it's like there's a splinter still in the heart, and it's tender, like when you hurt your elbow and you just say, oh, there's something still in there, and every time you touch it, it hurts, and the only way of making it better is you actually have to get the splinter out. And that's the work that needs to happen, is the forgiveness work, where you're letting yourself say, ouch, that happened. It wasn't fair. I didn't want it. Maybe it was even a mistake, but ouch. So we're honoring the vulnerable part as part of the process, the part that took the hits. And so if we're not in touch with the payoffs, what we get out of holding the resentment, all the good stuff, and we're not aware of the downside either, because carrying resentment, if I've got all this and the resentment is going inside my system, and the etymology of the word resentment comes from sentir, the Latin to feel. So feeling again, resent, it's I'm feeling it again. Oh, I'm feeling it again. Oh, that, it's like all the feelings are inside me. And there's some really lovely quotes like, holding on to your resentment is like taking poison and hoping the other person will die. Or my favorite, holding on to your resentment is like setting yourself on fire and hoping the other person will be bothered by the smoke. They're not even in the fire. They're like over there, and you're hoping that the wind will waft in their direction so they'll be bothered by it. But of course, it's you, all of the stuff is inside you. And we're not aware that our resentment has any downsides, that it's actually costing us. It's costing our peace of mind. It's costing our sleep. It's costing our intimacy. It's costing our integrity, our humanity, because there, but for the grace of God, go I. It costs us in our authenticity. All these different costs, we're completely oblivious because we just think, well, they're wrong. And we're not going, oh, actually, also, I have been wrong. Once, obviously, but I was wrong, and so it costs us in our compassion and our humanity. That's the downside. Again, we don't see it. We're not aware of it. And all of this is happening in our subconscious, like the iceberg. There's this bit at the top, which is how wrong they are. And then underneath is all the what I'm holding on to, what I'm doing, what's not happening. There's all the subconscious material. And that's why I think of forgiveness as a shadow process, a clearing up process.
I think that is really cool, like just seeing the real, and like I can see as you're talking about all these different things, like I can see it as I'm like looking back, like it is actually, there are some payoffs, like it is I don't know, it's like fun or if easy, like it's easy to reach for that. And like I love what you said about the etymology of it and like the recirculating of the feeling. And it just, we've got to have some sort of drama. Sometimes we think we need to have that to like, I don't know, make up.
And also culturally, all of our focus is on revenge and, the person who's done you wrong, and stand up to the man and don't let people get one over on you, and we have a real kind of cultural desire, I think it is a bit addictive. Brené Brown says that resentment, she says it goes down like a milkshake, but it burns your insides like battery acid. We want it,
Wow.
but actually
Yeah.
it destroys us. And sometimes I do these playful things where I get people to imagine we're going to rewrite Romeo and Juliet, but with like including forgiveness. So the Montagues and the Capulets, they meet, they have a mediated meeting, they do their forgiveness work, and then there's a wedding. And of course, no one would want to go and see that play because there's no drama, there's no death, it's
Yeah.
just a wedding. That's boring. That's never going to be a hit series on Netflix. And that is some of the problem, is
Mhm.
that we don't want to forgive. And so sometimes it's we don't realize that we need to. And some of it is, even if we do, we don't really want to. And that's the sort of big secret. We don't really want to.
Yeah, that's
It's
that
embarrassing.
is yeah, that's I think it one of the things that you said is you talked about like being able to say out loud like what the problems are and what you feel like you actually like acknowledging those things because I mean, you're right. I think sometimes it is embarrassing. You're like, well, there's this stupid little silly thing that happened that
Yes.
I've been holding on to for like all this time. And I think that is part of it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's embarrassing
Decades.
that decades
Yeah.
that I've held on to this one little stupid thing. So
Yeah.
what would you say to people that like maybe they do feel embarrassed of like because these are small, these are simple, they feel I don't
Yeah.
know, almost shameful that they need to like
I would
have
I would say I would say you're in really good company. Really good company. There's millions of us. When I work with the groups online, I get everyone to write their forgiveness list. So, as many as possible. And then the number of years that they've held the resentment. And most individuals have more than 100, sometimes many hundreds. And so in a group, you've got thousands of years of resentment. So that automatically makes you feel like you're in good company. These are my people. These are the resentful people. I love them because they're like me, holding on to grudges and grievances that they really want to let go of, but we didn't know how. I mean, that's the truth of it. Is
yeah.
we don't really have an outlet. There aren't forgiveness schools. If you're not in any kind of religious or traditional spiritual, um if you're not in a traditional spiritual setting, maybe you don't even have a teaching about forgiveness. I mean,
Mhm.
most of the major traditions do, which is great.
Yeah.
Some of them are not really that good at practicing it, or they have a practice but seem to not use it. I'm not saying any names, but it's a cultural thing
Yeah.
that we really could do with learning how to do. And that's sort of my mission, is to kind of help make that easier. And then also, the other thing to say is sometimes we also need to untangle the mind. So forgiveness is very much about untangling the heart, but we also need to know that a lot of the time our minds are tricking us. We're not
Mm.
always telling ourselves the truth about situations, and we have to be able to do that distancing thing, which you learn with mindfulness or meditation or any kind of willingness to take a step back and ask yourself, actually, is this true? The thing that I'm saying to myself, or my particular perspective, because everyone has their own frame. We all know that
Yeah.
through the frame of the ego, life is filtered through it, and we're given that the frame of the ego comes from our early circumstances and our, whatever it is, our traditions and all that sort of thing. And we learn to see life in a particular way, and it's really helpful to be able to question that as well, without destabilizing yourself completely, but just to have a little bit of, well, I wonder, when I judge that person, is that even true, the thing that I'm accusing them of or thinking that they've done or not done? That can be really
Mhm.
helpful. And when it comes to self-forgiveness, that's an essential part, because self-forgiveness is so much more intimate. It's, in here. And but we do the same things, that we don't forgive for the same reasons. We think that if we let ourselves off the hook, we might carry on and do the same thing again, so we don't forgive ourselves. And then also there's that thing about, you have to forgive yourself first before you can forgive other people. And I really don't believe that that's true, because I think that can hold a lot of people up. No, wait, I'm not going to forgive you because I haven't forgiven myself yet. Come back to me when I'm 90.
Yeah, that is, I've heard that, and I've never thought about it in that way of like, because we do sometimes put those absolutes like, oh, I can't do this for you because I haven't done it for me yet. But like, you got to start somewhere learning those things, right? And so if I
Exactly.
can maybe learn to forgive you, then maybe it'll transfer later to me. And I love that idea of
Yeah.
like,
Start anywhere. That's what I say.
I love
Start with
that.
the easy wins. You know, and that's the other thing about having forgiveness as a practice is don't go for the biggest thing. When I work with the groups, I don't ever do a forgive your mum. I never do that as a group because it's too much. You need one-to-one assistance with that because it's such a foundational relationship.
Mhm.
And I say I get people to kind of grade the level of their resentment on a 1 to 10 grade. So 1 is like not really that much, 10 is like significant, and I get them to work around in the middle because you want to learn the practice and get
Mhm.
familiar with it with something that's relatively easy. And even then, when people do a practice on something that looks like it's a 5, they're going, I didn't realize there was so much in there. I didn't realize I was still holding on to it. And that is the important thing, is we don't realize. It's a bit like when you get into one of the cupboards underneath your kitchen sink and you're like, oh my God, what is that at the back? You know, and you're getting all of the stuff out. Oh, I didn't realize I had that in there. Same.
Yeah. That is, I love that. Start with the small things and just opening up. And I think sometimes for me, one of my struggles of like opening up and be like, okay, like we need to work on this is it's like maybe you do realize that there's a lot in there. And it can be, I think, sometimes intimidating to be like, well, if I open this box, like you know how long it took me to pack it all down so it would
Yeah.
fit in this box. I'm like, it's gonna explode. There's gonna be no room.
Yes.
So that I
Yeah.
think
Well, I
is,
can respond to that, which is,
yeah.
I mean, I do like thinking of forgiveness as a practice because rather than a can of worms, it's more like a Tupperware pot of worms, and you can take one of the corners off, get one of the worms out, firmly put the lid back down again, and deal with that particular worm. And
Oh,
even with a mum or a dad, I have had one client who has taken 3 90-minute sessions to work on her mum, but she did have very extreme circumstances. Most of the time you can get most of it cleared out in one session, and it's a bit like clearing a pot, you know, like you do like a really good job, you swill it out, you pour out the water, and then you look at the bottom, maybe there's a bit that's burnt on and you need something a bit more, you might need to go back and do a bit more scraping. But for most people, 90 minutes to shift a lifetime of resentment of one person, I think that's a good deal.
wow, that is a really good deal. And I don't know, I love that you're like not, how do I say this? Like, oh, you said shifting all of this stuff in 90 minutes, like maybe a couple 90-minute sessions, but like maybe it doesn't have to be quite as hard as we are making it out to be. I'm realizing that there's a lot of things that like maybe they're not as hard as I'm making. And then, my friends, will be the next episode. Our third episode on forgiveness will be about, is it really as hard as we make it, and what the positive impacts of forgiveness. So stay tuned for that and have a fantastical day. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed what you've heard today, please leave a review down below and share this with anyone that you feel like could use a little more brave in their life. And if you'd like to follow more of my journey to be brave, you can follow me on social media and link down below. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to be brave.